Psychoanalytic therapy. Sigmund Freud.
Freud is the one who invented this therapy. At the third year of university, he started a research into nervous system. Freud qualified as a doctor of medicine at the University of Vienna.
Then he worked at the Vienna General Hospital. In 1885, Freud went to Paris as a student of the neurologist Jean Charcot. In the following year, he returned to Vienna to set up a private practice that is specialized in nervous and brain disorders. In 1897, he began an intensive analysis of himself. Then his major work, The Interpretation of Dreams, was published.
Freud analyzed dreams in terms of unconscious desires and experiences.
Freud developed the theory that humans have unconscious mind
that define the primary source of human behavior.
Like an iceberg, the most important part of the mind is that the part you cannot see. Our feelings, motives, and decisions are actually powerfully influenced by our past experiences and stored in the unconscious.
3 levels of consciousness identified by the Freud.
3 of them is consciousness, preconsciousness, and unconsciousness.
Each of them apply and interfere with Freud ideas of the id, ego, and superego.
Key concept: view of human nature. According to Freud, our behavior is determined by irrational forces, unconscious motivations, and biological and instinctual drives. And this is the key psychosexual stages in the first 6 years of life. Instinctual drive, we can say that as a life instinct. Freud includes that all the pleasurable acts in his concept of the life instincts. Freud sees that the goal of life is gaining pleasure and avoiding pain. Next is a structure of personality. It is ruled by the pleasure principle, which is aimed at reducing tension, avoiding pain, and gaining pleasures. It is the original source of personality, which is present in a newborn. It is unaffected by the environment, and it also is completely selfish. It also is the most basic part of the personality. It represents our most animalistic urge, like desire for food and sex. If these needs or wants are not met, a person can become tense, anxious, or angry. Ego also can be known as the rational level of personality. Ego operates on the reality principle, which is thus realistic and logical thinking.
Ego is the balance between id and superego. The ego recognizes that other people have needs and wants too. And being selfish is not good in the long run. The example of recognition of ego:
Mary really wanted to borrow her mom's necklace, but knew her mom would be angry if she took it without asking. So she asked her mom if she could wear it. So based on the situation, we know that the ego have balanced the id of Mary. Superego is partially unconscious. Superego able to differentiate between good and bad, right and wrong. If people follow their superego, they will feel proud, but if they don't follow, they will feel guilty and anxious. The example of superego: Sarah knew she could steal the supplies from work and no one would know about it. However, she knew that stealing was wrong, so she decided not to take anything, even though she would probably never get caught. Consciousness and the unconscious. The unconscious cannot be studied directly, but we can infer from the behavior. Dreams. The dream is like a symbolic representation from the unconscious needs, wishes, and conflicts. Slips of the tongue and forgetting. For example, a child who accidentally calls their teacher as a mom, or a husband accidentally calls his wife names by replace with the other girl's name. And the example of forgetting is like we forgot about family name.
Now, I'm going to present about the key concepts of psychoanalytic therapy. The first key concept is called deterministic. Freudian views the human nature as deterministic. By means, our actions is determined by our irrational forces, unconscious motivation, and instinctual and biological drives. For example, Ahmad has difficulty in understanding math subject in class. Then, what would he do when in the near future there will be a math quiz? His instinctual drive would lead him to raise some questions during class, and he will study harder outside class period. The second key concept is called consciousness and unconsciousness. Consciousness is our awareness of our surrounding. Our conscious mind consists of thoughts, wishes, memories, and feelings. For example, I am aware that I feel happy and content right now. While unconsciousness lies below our awareness, where it consists of our repressed memories, wishes, experiences that can be discovered through dreams or slip of tongue. The picture shows the dark side is the unconscious mind, while the bright side is the conscious mind. The third key concept is structures of personality, which consists of three main elements: id, ego, and superego. Id is like the immature side of us, whereas they work on pleasure principle. Pleasure principle means whatever they want, we have to satisfy it to reach pleasure. The second one is called ego. Ego is the good character in us because it uses rational thinking and it works to balance the id and superego. The last one is called superego. It's like the best character in us, whereas they work on the judicial branch of personality to determine whether an action is good or bad. For example, back to Ahmad, who will be having a math exam in 2 days, and he wants to achieve high score. His id side tell him no matter how it is, he has to get a high score even if he has to cheat in his exam. But his superego side would tell him that cheating is prohibited in exam and he must not do it. So, what would the ego do? The ego would find the best way to balance the id and superego, which is to keep focus and study harder. The fourth key concept is ego defense mechanisms, which consists of 11 mechanisms to cope with anxiety. 1. Repression, where our thoughts and emotions are being repressed to prevent further anxiousness. 2. Denying or denial to prevent hurt feeling. 3. Reaction formation, where it develops the conscious behavior opposed to the disapproving behavior, such as being nice to the person we hate. 4. Projection, where we put the blame on someone else. 5. Displacement is directing energy towards another object or person that does not fight back. 6. Rationalization is manufacturing good reasons to explain away a bruised ego. 7. Sublimation is diverting sexual or aggressive energy into other channels, such as diverting sexual energy into considering it as an art. 8. Regression is reverting to a form of behavior that they have outgrown when there were fewer demands. 9. Introjection is taking in and swallowing the values and standards of others. 10. Identification is adopting the behavior of a person who is more powerful. 11. Compensation is masking perceived weakness or developing certain positive traits. For example, Michelle is not good at academic subject, but she is excellent at making music. So, those are the 11 mechanisms to help human in coping with anxiety. The fifth key concept is the concept of anxiety. Psychoanalytic theory defines anxiety as a feeling of frightened or fear, as the results from repressed feelings, memories, desires, and experiences that came up to the awareness. There are 3 types of anxiety. The first one is reality anxiety, which is the fear of danger from external world, such as avoiding dogs to prevent being bitten. The next one is neurotic anxiety, is the fear of our instinct or id will be uncontrollable that will lead to inappropriate behavior or punishment. The next one is moral anxiety, which is the fear of one's own conscience. It can be in the form of feeling guilty after being scolded by parents. The last key concept is the development of personality that refers to Sigmund Freud's psychosexual stages from birth through adulthood. Moving on, now I am going to explain about the roles and function of a group leader in psychoanalytic therapy. A psychoanalytic therapy is usually a leader-centered therapy, whereas the group leader must actively organize, direct, coordinate, support, and motivate the members' effort. The group leader has a role in shedding light on what is happening to the group or to an individual member. The therapy emphasizes on each individual's stories to identify the unconscious life of each member. Thus, the other member in the group could give the reaction and could do acting to it. The control of the leader is important when transference, counter-transference, resistance, and the use of ego defense mechanisms occur during the therapy, as the emotion can become very heated in the group. So, the leader has the responsibility to hold the groups together.
Okay, understanding the history of the members of a group and a way of thinking about how their past affecting them now. Okay, for example, there is a situation that one members in a group has talked about his or her past experience. Coincidentally, his or her past experience similar to your past experience. Maybe about sad experience or your sad experience. So indirectly, it brings along your feelings and emotion on that past experience. Okay, transfer of feeling from the past to someone in the present. Okay, the target, it could be group members or therapists. Okay, for example, that just now there is one people talk about his or her past experience, and at the same time there is one member that has the same experience, and indirectly it brings along it brings along the emotion and feelings on that experience. Okay, for example, that is experience of her late father, that he is very angry on her late father for being scold her or him. So, and the feelings of angry he or she brings back to the members. Okay, not only members, it could be the therapist. So it can show the feelings. It could be seen through this transference. Okay, counter transference. Okay, counter transference is the redirection of therapist's feelings or emotion towards the client. Okay, for example, there is one story from the client has affected on the therapist. Maybe there is similarities in the story from the client, and suddenly it brings the emotion or unconscious feelings toward that discussion, and it could lead the therapist to express excessive self-disclosure, and self-disclosure, it could lead to non-beneficial talk. So it's not good for the discussion. Okay, resistance. Okay, resistance is about the unwillingness of client to discuss about certain or particular topic. For example, there is one of the group members has talked about abusive or adultery issue, and there is another girl has the same past experience related to it, and maybe she did not pleasure to that topic, and she will try to change that topic. Okay, the ego defense mechanism to protect ourselves from feelings of anxiety or guilt that develop will feel during we feel threatened or because of our id and superego becomes too demanding. Okay, there is one example in ego defense mechanism. For example, is displacement. Okay, displacement is transfer of negative emotion from one person to unrelated person or things. Okay, for example, there is one girl had a failure in exam, and he blamed and he want to transfer that feeling to maybe to the dog or another thing, or maybe to his parents, okay, to her parents. So this is, we call it as a displacement. We transfer the negative emotion to another person or things. Okay, there is a strength and limitation. Okay, the strength, the first is groups can provide a dynamic understanding of how people function in out of group situation, and the next is can examine and educate the past unconscious feeling through group sharing. Okay, for example, there is people that had addiction issue, and he survived, and there is one member that had struggle to overcome the addiction. So the members that had survived and in the addiction issue, so he tried to help this member to overcome as well. Okay, next is less time consuming or economical therapies. Of course, when it comes to group discussion, group therapy, we get shorten our time. Okay, unlike the role playing theories, like need to role play the issue or some problems. So these groups could shorten the times and didn't need any time, didn't need any role playing that needed more time. And economical therapies, because in the bulk, okay, we discuss in the bulk, we discuss in one group in the time. Okay, limitation, create the negative emotion and negative feelings toward the other member. Okay, let's say there is a situation that a man shared about his past experience, that he had issue regarding the child abusive issue. He scold and kick and scold his daughter, and there suddenly there is another member has the same experience, but she had a victim of the abusive issue. So indirectly it could lead that girl to bring the negative emotion and feeling towards that guy. So what we call it as the limitation of this psychoanalytic therapy. And the last is overemphasize on internal factor, which is, okay, when it comes to psychoanalytic, it emphasizes and focusing on our internal feelings, emotion and thoughts. Okay, in Islamic perspective, what I conclude or summarize is psychoanalytic therapy is part of the internal factors. Okay, internal factor, for example, emotion, thoughts and feeling, and it's similar to the spirituality. Okay, Allah has given a guide for us on how to control, how to guide, how to educate our spirituality. And for example, we perform a prayer, okay, repentance on all our wrongdoings and zikir. So that is what I could apply the Islamic perspective in this psychoanalytic therapy. Thank you very much.